Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to do a video from B1M, and it is the insane tunnels under Big Ben. Found this actually when I was kind of looking at the London Underground, some of the railroads, and actually I watched a video last night of was an American that goes in and checks out a bunch of abandoned places, and he met up with some Londoners that were able to like scale a building and get them into the underground tunnels, I guess beneath London, and where they had like used them as bomb shelters. And like part of it, I guess at one point they said that it was sealed now, but it also connected with Buckingham Palace. Just a wild, wild story. It's really good. But this one is apparently the tunnels under Big Ben, which I didn't even know that existed. But apparently, just every city has all these tunnels running under it. Really interesting. So we're gonna check it out. I'm gonna learn more about it. Hopefully. Maybe you guys will as well, or you might already know. You can learn with me. But I will link this video in the description, along with a link over to Patreon and a link of how you can support the channel right here on YouTube with a one-time donation or by becoming a member and getting some extra perks, like access to videos before anybody else. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Aside from scones, the king, and our love of tea, across the world, people tend to associate London with Big Ben. The Elizabeth Tower is one of the UK's most famous buildings, standing in the historic Palace of Westminster. It survived 2 world wars, seen 7 different monarchs, and has overseen the transformation of London. But despite all it's lived through, 30 years ago the Great Tower was put in a precarious position. And it's all because of this. The tube station under Westminster was in need of an overhaul, and that meant digging tunnels and expanding below the priceless and not entirely stable foundations of the Palace of Westminster. Working in an incredibly tight space, with Big Ben above them and the Thames mere metres away, the pressure on this team was through the roof. This is one of the most sensitive construction projects ever undertaken in this city. It's the fascinating story of Westminster Underground and how it threatened Big Ben.
Maybe they connected to Big Ben in that video that I watched.
Big Ben, or the Elizabeth
Tower.
Actually,
they were talking about in the video that they had plans, I think, for next year, 2027. They were wanting to do a project where they like actually made it open to the public and made it into like bars and all kinds of stuff down underground. And they actually had a working elevator in there. I kind of I watch this stuff when I'm going to sleep, so I don't remember all of it. But it was really, really interesting. It was too long for me to watch on the channel, but I might try to look and see if I could find a little bit more information on it to watch with you guys. It was really good.
Just be the most iconic clock tower in the world. It's actually just the bell at the top that's called Big Ben, but for ease we're going to use that name to refer to the whole structure for the rest of this video. Completed in 1859, it sits here in the Palace of Westminster, which is nearing 1,000 years old. That's 700 years older than George Washington, 300 years older than Henry VIII, and was probably the last time England enjoyed a rain-free summer. It's one of the most historically important areas anywhere in Europe.
On the beaches.
Mr. Speaker, the British people have voted to leave the European Union.
We shall fight in the hills.
Remember the 5th of November.
We shall never surrender!
But it's down here where things get really interesting. This is Westminster Underground Station, originally constructed by Cut and Cover and opened on Christmas Eve in 1868. But come the 1990s, it was due an upgrade. London's biggest infrastructure project for over 40 years was underway with the £3.5 billion Jubilee Line extension. Westminster Underground was the final station to open on the extension, and there's a very good reason why it was left till last. You see, an expansion of this station had been on the cards since the 1960s, but it was, to put it mildly, a little bit tricky. A familiar foe to development in Europe was holding up progress. More than 1,000 years of history. A series of protected buildings lay above the station, including St Stephen's Club, St Stephen's Chambers, and the Palace Chambers. There were objections to knocking them down, that is, until Margaret Thatcher came along. Under her guidance, the buildings were flattened. In their place, Portcullis House was constructed as offices for Parliament, designed by Hopkins architects. It was built as an integrated whole on top of the station, with structural elements flowing from the surface down into the new deep-level tube platform.
Designing the two things together was an immense technical challenge.
Andy Barnett, a principal at Hopkins, who worked on this project as a junior architect, says it was incredibly complex.
Weaving the structure of this heavyweight building above us, which it had to be from a security point of view. It's a World Heritage Site, so it's heavyweight stone. Getting that to work with this structure beneath it was an amazing technical challenge.
6 massive columns take the weight of the downward thrusts from the inner walls of the courtyard. The rest of the load is then supported by a massive concrete core containing escalators and lifts for the deep platforms. The box is made up of buttressed walls and is supported by solid steel beams measuring 2 feet in diameter to stop the structure from collapsing. The walls, escalators and ticket barriers follow one of 2 grids: the diagonal grid of the railway, which cuts across the site at a 45-degree angle, or the orthogonal grid of the building above. Then, the 30-metre deep escalator box to the Jubilee Line platforms follows below. But space was far from abundant, and you can see that just by looking up. The ceilings were designed with honeycomb-shaped indents coupled with strategically placed lighting to make the absolute most of the limited dimensions on offer. As part of the redevelopment, the existing Circle and District tube line needed to be lowered. That then allowed for the front door of Portcullis House to be added at street level, while creating space for a ticketing floor to be constructed below and a deep level platform at the bottom for the Jubilee Line.
Wow.
We had to lower the District and Circle line by a foot, in itself quite a feat of structural engineering. Once we'd done that, this whole hall was then built below that hanging as a bridge above us, and then we did what was called top-down construction and gradually built this thing downwards.
At the time, thousands of people were travelling through here every day, and it needed to remain active, which presented a serious conundrum. The answer was to suspend 130 metres of Circle and District line in place while still welcoming trains full of people.
Construction happened in phases. So the very first thing they needed to do was build a bridge around the Circle and District line. And then they had to excavate the box around the rest of the station. But what they ended up doing was essentially taking apart the Circle and District line track and just kind of lowering it bit by bit at night during engineering hours.
If that's all sounding like a cup of tea so far, then don't worry, because we're about to turn up the heat. The real kicker is just across the road. As I mentioned earlier, Big Ben is old and precious, but has some issues with its foundations. It's thought that could stem from movement caused by the drying out of the London clay that the tower is built on. You see, when clay gets wet, it swells, and when it dries out, it shrinks, and over time that causes movements in building foundations, and as we mentioned, Big Ben has been here for centuries. It wasn't on the surest of footings back in 1993, and it was thought that it could become a real issue, so caution was crucial.
We're standing at the bottom of a 30-metre open box, and when people are moving through this, they're probably not realising that we're actually only a few hundred metres from Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster, one of our nation's most iconic pieces of architecture, a World Heritage Site. Clearly that's a pretty delicate structure. In digging this hole, we had to know we weren't disturbing that in any shape or form.
To help maintain the stability of the tower, and indeed the Palace of Westminster, John Burland, a professor at Imperial College London, was brought on board. Now, on John's CV, you'll see that he was also part of a team that worked on stabilising the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and last time we checked, that was still standing. So this guy seems to know his stuff. Before construction had even begun, Big Ben was inclined to lean to the northwest by about 22 centimetres. The tower's movement is measured using a weight that hangs on a string called an automated plumb line. If the tower tilted, they'd see it in the angle of the string. As an added measure, an optical plumb was installed. It's generally more accurate and works a bit like this, using light like a laser on a stable base to create a vertical line. Daily, they could track any movement to an accuracy of 10 millimeters. Now, work took place in stages to let the ground settle and to review the impact on the famous old tower before works could then continue.
So what we needed to do was install steel pipes to make sure that you're keeping Big Ben from moving, and we're injecting grout with the steel pipes to displace any soil that might move. And with that, we kept Big Ben from moving to the point where you would have cracks in its foundation.
The positioning of the new Jubilee Line tracks was designed with the protection of Big Ben in mind. They'd run to one side of the massive concrete box, and you'll notice they're stacked up. Usually, the eastbound and westbound tracks in the London Underground would sit side by side, but here the eastbound tracks sit on top of the westbound line. And it's to do with vibrations. Trains travel through here constantly during the day, and as you can imagine, over time, that would have a pretty unsettling impact on the surrounding soil. By stacking the lines, the footprint of the railway was minimised and the buildings above were spared. But Big Ben wasn't the only iconic London landmark causing issues for this construction site. Just over the road is the River Thames, 215 miles long and more than 800 feet wide at this point. It's not common to dig down and place a 30-metre box this close to the river, and it presented some challenges. During construction of the station, the diaphragm walls began leaking water. One wrong move could have flooded the tube system. Aside from rivers and highly precious buildings, anyone well versed in London rumours may be wondering whether tunnels had caused any issues. It's long been thought that a system of underground routes exists underneath Westminster. Now, while we can't shed much light on whether MI5 are scuttling about under the city, we do know a tunnel was opened up during construction from the station across.
Maybe it was. I'm trying to think. I thought they said that those tunnels connected to Buckingham Palace because you assume that, like, they were talking about Queen Elizabeth in it, but that, like, you would have to, like, evacuate, the royal. At the time, I get maybe when that video was done, she was still around, but that they would have to evacuate her through those tunnels. Or whoever, I guess, whoever was around back then, maybe her, I don't know. But then they refound them later and sealed them. I don't know. But it made sense that they would have access to, underground access to the bunkers. But now I'm like, I don't know, was it Westminster Abbey that they were talking about? But that doesn't make as much sense. Is Buckingham Palace like right close to all this stuff? I have no clue.
Across Westminster Bridge to the palace. But even if there hadn't been a system of tunnels to avoid, the challenges faced to redevelop this space were immense. Damaging Big Ben or flooding the tube would have been no minor accident. But thankfully, the entire station and Portcullis House above stand as a powerful example of design and engineering mastery. The final result is truly impressive. 25 years later, this is one of the most eye-catching stops on the entire London tube map. With its
really
exposed
nice
structural elements and dramatic stainless steel escalators against the rough finish of the concrete box, it's both bold and brilliant. Westminster Underground Station is kind of aging like a fine wine. This city could be welcoming further developments to its tube line in the coming years with a possible Bakerloo line extension. Our advice would be to look at what's been done here and use it as a mark of what can be achieved for the stations of tomorrow. Westminster Underground is truly impressive, and the story of how it came to be will live on and inspire engineers for generations. don't forget that we're raising awareness of construction's mental health crisis and supporting charities in this space.
Really, really good video. Really interesting. Yeah, after yesterday watching those, like, ghosts, railroad stations and stuff, last night was just really in the mood to watch a bunch of stuff, so I ended up watching a lot of, like, New York City stuff, Cincinnati, Columbus, Boston stuff, and then, kind of saw, like, some other stuff with you guys. The video that I watched, normally I would just like wait and watch it with you all, but it was really long and it's not like something we typically would do. But I would like to see one, at least, these guys were doing it, obviously sneaking in. The alarms were going off, it was wild. But maybe one where they're actually with, like, somebody who works for the city or works in the transit or whatever, they can actually take them through and knows where stuff is. I think that would be really cool. I didn't come across any like that, or I would have saved it, but I was looking for one, and maybe if you guys know one that talks about that renovation, of those tunnels, and like what they're gonna, it looked like they wanted to put like restaurants and like lounges and stuff in there, like underground, and it was really far underground, but they had, um the guys that I watched it initially climbed on a bunch of really kind of skinny round ladders, and then they got all the way down there just to find like there was actually a working, really nice elevator in there. But it was interesting. But I could swear they were talking about it for 2027. Maybe that's when they wanted to start the renovations. I'm not sure. Um, you guys are gonna have to comment and let me know if you know what I'm talking about, if you're familiar with this, because it seemed really interesting, and I wish, I went down a rabbit hole of stuff, like, especially in New York, where they had all these there was one that was like connected to City Hall. I mean, I guess it's still there. Um, just gorgeous, like arches and like glass windows over top that brought in sunshine. And then I guess they do tours of it now, but they don't use it. Um, I think they said they brought it back at one point for like a day, maybe. They put it in use, and then they got rid of it again. It was just for that one day. But it's just like the proximity, which at the time was fine, but like, modern issues, security issues, they really don't want to open it back up to the public for use every day, just of how close it is to City Hall and government buildings and stuff like that. Which I kind of thought of a little bit when I was watching this. But yeah. Anyways, I've trailed off, but I really enjoyed that video. I like these types of videos. I think they're interesting. So if you all have one that is in this vein and you want me to check it out, please, please put it in the comments. I really, really like these. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for listening to me babble and watching my videos with me, watching these videos with me. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, and above all, have a great, great, great day, guys. Thanks for watching.